So you have to do this a little bit, right? In order to loosen yourself up if you're going to try and sit for longer and longer. And, when I started out, it felt like there was this extraordinary pressure to extend the sit, right? But you don't have to extend the sit, right? What you have to do is to progress in your sit at a pace that allows you to sustain it, right? And that might be a much slower pace than the next guy, right? And so you take the breaks, right? And then you do the exercises, right? Andrew, this is the thing that you do, right? In order to keep the hip flexors in shape, right? So that you can do the thing, right? And you do a little bit of this one, right? And then you do a little bit of this one, right? Then you do a little bit of this pulsing one. And then if you have a little bit, I need to bring my tush up, but obviously because I'm on a run, I didn't bring it, so I don't have any way to lift myself up. That is why my posture is. So if you are looking at me from if I could elevate my tush a little bit, right? This is normally the place where it's comfortable for me to be able to sit for, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, right? But so, and the reason that is important, right, is that everything lives on the ground, man. Everything lives on the ground. Elephants live on the ground. Yeah, I mean, if the whole grounding thing works for you, then you're already ahead of me, right? But I'm talking to the person who is like, why should I sit on the floor? Why can't I just leave it alone? Maybe it's better to bow down to the floor if you can't sit. Because there's something about sitting in a chair, man. There's something about sitting in the chair that I always knew was going to end up being bad for us. Because when I was growing up, the chairs that they had in West Africa, they didn't have backs, right? So they just elevated you about yay high from the ground. That's all they did for you. And for some reason, the more sophisticated the people get, the further up they stand, right? It's as if evolution is how high you can increase the angle between your calves and your thighs, right? The higher you can increase that angle, the more evolved you are. Because the higher up you can stand, right? There's a family behind me, so no, I'm going to get a little bit self-conscious. But the point that I was trying to make is that it's important that we don't grow up too fast, right, Nan? Because I think that is what's happening to the world, right? Is that we are accelerating the pace of life. And it is really like being on speed. I've never been on speed, but I imagine that maybe that's what it's like to be coked out of your mind, right? Is that you're living so fast, man. You're living so fast that you don't have time to learn children things, man. Listen, man, part of the reason pornography is bad for the world, it's not, if you have the church reason, then you're ahead of me, so congratulations, keep going. But if you're secular and you're asking yourself, man, why can't I have access to porn whenever I want? Here's why. Because if anything becomes that common, eventually it's going to reach children, right? It's like it's the thing that we're finding out about microplastics. Whatever you put in the atmosphere, eventually you get it into the children, I don't have children, okay? So this is not about me protecting the next generation, right? But the reason it's important to pay attention to the pace of life is that eventually it's going to get inside the children. And once it gets inside the children, you may not be able to get it out. Because the children are how we preserve the DNA, right? The children are how we preserve the DNA. Because in them, we strip out all the insanity, right? That is what purity is. The reason we have this extraordinary desire to protect and shield and nurture them is because they are the vault, man, you know? And so whatever you get inside of the children, you can't bleed it out, man, you know? You may not be able to bleed it out anyway. Yeah, man. Shoku, that's why I want to talk to you about Iran. Because the other day I was talking to you and you seemed to suggest that maybe this is one of the ways that we're going to bring about change. Maybe. And I didn't agree with you, you know. I didn't agree with you because what if one of the bombs that is being dropped right now is going to fall on top of this cave, right? That was overrun by, I don't know, some earthquake. And inside that cave, right, was a small tribe of people who kept records going back another 10,000 years. You have to remember, right? The cities were not that big. Take MIT and shrink it to 1/1,000,000th of its size. That was the kind of team that was preserving knowledge going back 10,000 years. That was the size of that team. And so if you go and then you draw bombs on that cave, maybe we gained democracy, right? But maybe we also lost 10,000 years of understanding what we are. And what we might become, right? Because they keep telling us that the further back we can see, the farther forward we can plan and schedule, right? And so if you drop a bomb on that cave, because that place in the tropics, right? Frank Zanu says that, man, you know, these tropical countries, they're not developed, you know, they are not calcified, they're not strong, you know, right? He says that look at Ghana, man, and look at Nigeria. It's embarrassing, man. Like, aren't you guys ashamed of yourselves? Then I want to say to Frank, right, that maybe Ghana and Nigeria and Brazil and Cameroon and Kenya and Benin and Sierra Leone, maybe they are the places in life where she can still flow, right? Maybe they haven't poured so much concrete, right, because they have not become sclerotized. Maybe they're the places where life is still possible, right? And maybe the glorification of this fantastic edifice behind me that its beauty is also a sign of a certain kind of dying. Because this thing, man, this concrete, it does not support life, you know. I mean, I really like this place, you know, it's cool, and I'm going to come out here and kick it a little bit more often until they throw me off. This concrete, it doesn't support life, my friend. And that is why we shouldn't bomb Iran also. Because, man, there was the leader of Tanzania, right? Julius Nyerere. And one time, he got the opportunity to sell the country's gold for a pittance, right? And he said no, right? He said that at the pace that his people were going to be able to extract wealth from that gold, giving the plan that was being offered him, he was better off keeping the gold underground so that in the future, when Tanzanians themselves can afford to extract the gold and keep more of it for themselves, then they can begin mining it. Right? Maybe there are places we shouldn't touch until we are grown enough. Maybe Iran is the preservation of a certain kind of innocence. Right? What if that is how we understood the mullahs, right? Shoku, what if we thought to ourselves that what Islam is saying, right, is that let us pretend we are not all fucked up, right? Like, this is the place where we're really going to make a push to pretend that we don't know that 9-year-old boys are clicking on pornography now. Because what would happen to us if we admitted that, right? If you make this thing so common, and I've consumed as much porn as the next guy, you know? I'm just trying to get it out of my system. It's not good for the world, man, you know? What I mean is that I'm not judging anyone. Then maybe you take this time to think about something in your life you haven't thought about. As you go deeper into this stretch, and maybe your muscles will communicate something to you about something you didn't resolve, some loop you didn't close, some call you didn't make, right? Something you didn't do, something. something you didn't do. Let's exercise a little bit, right? Why not? So we're going to do our sun salutations and then we'll head out, right? Let's bounce a little bit. Just bounce. Just loosen up. Let yourself loose. Right? And then we're going to burpee. We're going to try and do 10, right? All right, now we're gonna do the sun salutation and then we'll peace out. Yeah, that gets your heart rate up a little bit. Hang on, I'll grab some of the water. If you're also running these, tell me about your experience, right? Leave a comment below. Because it's so cool, man. So I do this thing where whatever I read about, I just go and I try to implement it in my life, right? So I think they are called the Raramuri, right? It's a tribe in South America that run in sandals, right? And I mean, they run long distances in sandals. That's what I mean. Because I know how that translates very easily for a Western mind, but in West Africa, I don't know that it'll make sense to anybody why somebody will go running a long distance in sandals, because I don't remember. See, that is the thing about culture, right? That is the thing about culture that I think Frank is right about. Sometimes a people do not develop because something in them has not mutated, right? So these people, as a tribe, as a tiny little people, one of the experiments that nature did among them was that it made them run long distances, right? Because, you know, the gene is trying to do this thing, right? It's trying to keep as many copies of itself because it knows that, man, this is going to become another long thing, and I don't want to do another long thing. So the gene is trying to keep as many copies of itself because it knows that from time to time it gets wiped out. Right? That's the thing that we're finding about the dinosaurs, is that they were here today and they were not. No, they were here today and then they would never be again. Right? And maybe that's what the Musk guy is saying also, but he could be nicer about it, you know? In him, what I mean is that in Elon Musk, the most terrified part of the gene is expressing itself. What he's saying is that the urgency of the experiment we're doing here might attract such catastrophe that unless we have a backup of ourselves someplace else, we will never be again, right? And wouldn't that be a terrible thing, right? Wouldn't it be a terrible thing if there was never a place like this where something like us could come out and lean over and look at a bird in flight over the Potomac? What if all this vanished? Because we forgot how vulnerable we were. And this is why we should keep all the copies of ourselves. Because there's something that is preserved in the Aborigines that may only be left in them. Maybe the thing you lose when you bring everyone into the city, maybe the thing you lose is the variety among us. Maybe as we homogenize, I feel like I'm doing a little bit of meditation, and then I'm doing a little bit of exercise, and then I'm doing a little bit of God only knows what, right? Doing a little bit of thinking too. I'm gonna get back on the job search. If you need a full stack Java engineer who also moonlights as a strange person on the internet, leave me a comment.